Tonight, His Majesty the King meets with the German Vice-Chancellor to discuss economic support for Jordan to boost its potential to address the challenge of hosting Syrian refugees. The Palestinian president warns of a new Palestinian uprising if violence at Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem does not ease and peace talks with Israel does not resume. And the European Union approves a plan to share out 120,000 refugees across its 28 states, overriding strong opposition from 4 ex-communist Eastern nations. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. His Majesty the King, the Supreme Commander of the Jordan Armed Forces Arab Army, was in the field to follow up on a drill carried out by the Royal Artillery Corps. The Supreme Commander watched the exercise from a monitoring center built recently upon his orders to develop the training process and ensure a high-standard training strategy for the various types of weapons. The King and senior officers, including the King Advisor for Military Affairs and Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, General Mish'al al-Zibn, and His Royal Highness Prince Faisal, were briefed by the Artillery Corps Chief on the fortified center's tasks and duties. The Supreme Commander expressed his admiration for the level and skills of the Armed Forces ranks. His Majesty the King met a German delegation led by Vice-Chancellor and Minister for Economic Affairs and Energy, Sigmar Gabriel, to discuss economic support for Jordan to boost its potentials to address the challenge of hosting Syrian refugees. During the meeting, the King pointed to the increasing burdens of accommodating the displaced Syrians, underlying the need for more aid by international organizations and donors to empower the kingdom to provide humanitarian services to them. Sigmar, who is on a tour of the region, commended the efforts Jordan has been exerting after taking in the Syrian refugees and said Berlin is willing to expand and deepen its partnership and cooperation with Jordan. Other Middle East developments were also discussed during the meeting, which was held at Al-Husseiniya Palace and attended by senior officials. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has appointed the heads of 4 working groups on Syria, signaling a step towards talks where warring parties are expected to discuss how to implement a roadmap for peace. UN Syrian envoy Staffan de Mistura voiced hope that their outcome could eventually set the stage for a Syrian agreement to end the conflict on the basis of a 2012 roadmap agreed by world powers in Geneva. The 4 are Jan Egeland, Nicolas Michel, Volker Perss, and Brigitte Holst-Alani, the Mistura's office said. The Mistura unveiled the idea for the working groups in July, saying they could be a step towards a Syrian-owned framework document that would provide for a transitional governing body, procedures for national dialogue, a constitution drafting process, and transitional justice issues. Iran Deputy Foreign Minister Hussein Amir Abdullah said Iran and Russia will work together with Syria to help Damascus find a way out of the crisis. He said at the news conference in Moscow that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad should take part in the political resolution. Abdullahian said that Tehran and Moscow will continue their contacts with Syrian opposition, adding that the Syrian opposition, which believes in the political resolution of the Syrian problem, is also a part of his resolution. Yesterday, a U.S. official said that Russia started flying drone aircraft on surveillance missions in Syria in what appeared to be Moscow's first military air operations there since staging a rapid build-up at a Syrian airbase. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas warned that there was a risk of a new Palestinian Intifada or uprising erupting if violence at Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem did not ease and peace talks with Israel did not resume. In a news conference after meeting French President François Hollande in Paris, Abbas called on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to order an end to Israeli actions in Jerusalem's Old City, stop continued settlement activity in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, and return to the negotiating table. Hollande urged calm in Jerusalem and said that the 1967 status quo, which meant access for Palestinians to Al-Aqsa, could not be put into question. The Palestinian leader was in Paris to meet Hollande ahead of the United Nations General Assembly next week. Hundreds of Palestinians held a funeral for a man who died when a bomb he was trying to throw at Israeli forces blew up prematurely near the West Bank city of Hebron overnight, as tensions mounted on the eve of the Jewish Yom Kippur fast day. Hours later in the same area, the Israeli military said troops shot a Palestinian woman as she tried to stab a soldier. A family member said Hadil al-Hashlamoun, a 19-year-old student, was taken to an Israeli hospital where she was later declared dead. Israeli forces were on particularly high alert in Jerusalem and the West Bank today, and security officials said travel between the West Bank, the Gaza Strip and Israel would be limited until the end of the fast day at midnight tomorrow. A Palestinian hospital official said the 23-year-old man was showered in shrapnel and also shot in the head, though the Israeli military said it had not shot him. The Islamic Jihad group, named him as Diya Abdul Halim Talameh, claimed him as one of its members and said he had been shot dead by the soldiers. In Yemen, the Saudi-led coalition bombed 2 houses in the capital Sana'a, killing at least 20 Houthi rebels and civilians. The air attack came a day after similar raids killed around 50 people. Meanwhile, Yemeni President Abd Mansour Hadi landed in Yemen's Aden, returning to the southern port city for the first time since he left for Saudi Arabia as Houthi fighters closed in 6 months ago. His return is the most concrete sign yet that a military coalition led by Saudi Arabia has secured enough territory from the Iran-allied Houthi militia for the exiled government to resume administrating at least part of the country. A government source said Hadi would spend the Eid al-Adha holiday in the city, then fly to New York to deliver a speech at the United Nations. Hadi was greeted by Prime Minister Khalid and several ministers who had returned to Aden last week to help set up an interim administration. Lebanese rival politicians arrived to the parliament building in central Beirut for the 3rd round of so-called national dialogue talks, while dozens of activists representing civic groups who accused the government of corruption and incompetence staged a protest nearby, refusing the dialogue and demanding far-reaching reforms. The meeting was called for last month by Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri, who invited Lebanese politicians from different parties in the country to meet and discuss ways out of a political crisis that has paralyzed government and fueled a wave of street protests. The first 2 sessions of the talks in the past 2 weeks ended with no apparent decision for a way out of a deadlock that has seen the cabinet struggle to take basic decisions and kept the presidency position vacant for more than a year. The European Union approved a plan to share out 120,000 refugees across its 28 states, overriding strong opposition from 4 ex-communist Eastern nations. Diplomats said interior ministers meeting in Brussels had voted to launch the scheme backed by Germany and other big powers in order to tackle the continent's worst refugee crisis since World War II. Even before the talks got underway in Brussels, however, the plan had already been rejected outright by the Czech Republic and criticized by a United Nations agency for not going far enough. Earlier, Dimitris Avramopoulos, European Commissioner for Immigration, said the migration issue was an existential issue for the EU, while Belgium's Interior Minister urged Eastern European states to show solidarity with countries now coping with the influx.
The migration issue is an existential issue for Europe. During this week, it will be a test whether Europe can really manage in an effective, but also in a united, with one voice way, this very challenging issue. But also, I'd like to add one more thing. There is the moment for everybody to show that we really mean it when we talk about responsibility and solidarity.
Hundreds of thousands of Muslim pilgrims from around the world headed from the holy city of Mecca to nearby Mina for the start of the Hajj, the world's largest annual gathering for Muslims. Saudi authorities have made elaborate arrangements for the pilgrims in Mina, where thousands of tents have been set up to host the pilgrims. Almost 2 million people are expected to take part in this year's pilgrimage. The climax of the Hajj season is on Arafat Day, which falls on Wednesday. We begin with basketball. Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy welcomed his country's basketball national team after they won their third European championship. Spain gained the trophy in style after a blistering performance by the talismanic Pau Gasol inspired them to an 80-63 win over Lithuania in the final in Lille, France. The Chicago Bulls center poured 25 points and ranked up 12 rebounds to help the 2009 and 2011 winners to their victory. The team's captain, Felipe Reyes, said the trophy came from a real team effort. Hawaii's Al-Bilayer won the Red Bull Unleashed final at the newly opened Surf Snowdonia Lagoon in Wales. Layer won the inaugural title by beating New Zealand's Billy Stearman in the final after rounds of quarter and semi-final in the lagoon. The Surf Snowdonia pool is located 16 kilometers inland from the Welsh coast near the mountain of Snowdon. The lagoon opened in August with a huge wave mechanism, producing small waves for learners and more challenging waves for competitors. It offers spectators a stadium-style view of surfing events. And finally, fair weather continues in most regions tonight with some clouds and northwesterly moderate winds. A slight rise in temperature is expected tomorrow, but it remains moderate in the hilly areas and relatively hot in the Badia and the Jordan Valley with southwesterly moderate winds. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect hot conditions tomorrow and northerly moderate winds and calm seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. And to end the news, here's a recap of our top stories. His Majesty the King meets with the German Vice-Chancellor to discuss economic support for Jordan to boost its potentials to address the challenge of hosting Syrian refugees. The Palestinian president warns of a new Palestinian uprising if violence at Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem does not ease and peace talks with Israel does not resume. And the European Union approves a plan to share out 120,000 refugees across its 28 states, overriding strong opposition from 4 ex-communist Eastern nations. And with this we come to an end. I'm Farah Ajlouni. Thank you for watching and have a good night.